All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We had a couple technical issues that we kind of worked through here in a minute, and but we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll kind of deal with our technical challenges as we go. But I think it's still going to work out all right. So first of all, thank you all for coming. This is our first webinar of the 2023 year. We do plan to continue these at 11 o'clock on the first Thursday of the month for the entire year. We are working on our schedule for 2023. We can tell you our February one, some of the others, we have some names in mind, but we're still finalizing titles and some details like that. So Thursday, February 2nd, will be Allie Townsend with the Montana Department of Agriculture's Business Development Division. And Allie is going to share with us, and I think I like her title, one of the best we've had here, of Beef, Beer, Pulse and Produce, how the state can assist you with grant funds towards your ag business expansion. So mark your calendars for that one. If you got a reminder email for this one, you'll get a reminder email for that as well. If you'd like to get on our reminder list, the same website that you logged in from today is the place to sign up, and then you'll get one email a month telling you what the upcoming session will be. So we won't blast you with lots and lots of emails, but if you'd like to get those reminder emails, please do sign up for our reminder list, and I will send those to you once a month. The rest of the schedule, we'll try to fill that in and put it on our website as it becomes available. Also on our website, I do want to remind you, we do record all of these. So we actually get a lot more views watching the recordings than we do in our live sessions. So if you want to go back and review some of the sessions from the past, or if you'd like to share them with someone, or you missed a portion, we typically get those posted within 24 hours of the session, and we often post the slides from the presenter as well. So if there's a website link that you're frantically trying to write down as we continue along, it is available to you after the fact as well. So just wanted to point out that those resources are available to you. We do have the same sponsors heading into 2023 as we did last year. So America's Small Business Development Centers, Montana Department of Commerce, the Small Business Administration, Montana State University Extension, who's my employer, Montana Economic Developers Association, the University of Montana, and some additional support from the Grow Great Falls Economic Development Group. So all of those folks sort of partner to bring this to you as a single event that's free and of no charge to you. With that, I am going to start sharing my screen here, and I'm going to turn it over to Marguerite. And Marguerite, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. She's with the she's a business advisor, and with that, I've hidden your bio behind my screen. So I will let you take it over and just tell me when to advance slides, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Joel. Hi, everybody. I'm Marguerite Thordarson, and as Joel said, I'm the business advisor at the W.E.L.L Women's Business Center. And I'm quite the nerd, and I'm really interested in this topic of supply chain and inventory management. So I'm actually really excited about this topic, and I'm really glad that some people are interested in hearing about it. My background is kind of where I'm getting a lot of this content that I put this presentation together with. My degree is in accounting, and I was kind of a super nerd about cost accounting and data analysis, operations management. So that's just kind of my skill set. And then I've also got a background working as a bookkeeper, a business advisor for some years. And then I'm just interested in what's happening in our global economy right now. So I just decided to put some research together. And really what I'm seeing is, as I work with a lot of different entrepreneurs around the country or around the state, I'm seeing some different set of issues that people are dealing with right now. And they're issues that they have in common. So I just decided to put this presentation together to share what I am saying to clients over and over again. Joel, would you advance the slide? So the key points that I wanted to make sure you got out of this presentation is that we know that there's no hiding from the fact that global supply chains are disrupted and businesses do inventory management different now. We just have to. So larger companies are using a lot of, technology in digital supply chain solutions in order to rebuild these networks. But small businesses need solutions too, and they need them to be accessible and easy and manageable and work for them. So I hope that you're able to find some solutions that would work for you in this presentation. Joel, would you advance, or wait, let's just stay right here for a second. I just want to kind of get an idea of who's here. And just sort of like if you wouldn't mind putting something in the chat box about what industry you're here with, what kind of business or company, maybe if you're B2B or B2C. I'm just kind of curious because I just want to be able to speak to you directly, but also just wanted you to know that if there's any question or comment or something you want to share as I'm talking, just throw it in the chat box. I just don't want to be a talking head for this presentation, and I'd like to talk to you the way I talk to my clients. So raise a hand, send a chat, just feel free to speak up in this presentation. So while you're doing that, we can advance to the next slide, Joel. And I just want to talk really quickly about how we used to do demand and supply planning in the pre-pandemic world. And it was done simply, probably a lot of it in our heads. Demand planning was essentially finding a pattern that you could predict, seasonal, monthly, annual, maybe price, maybe sales activities. And then we also would observe and survey and maybe ask for feedback from our customers and kind of get an idea of what consumers are doing just from outside observations. We also kind of spy on our competitors a little because we always want to know what they're offering and how we could do it better and what else is out there for our customers. But always there was this topic of disruptions in demand planning where we would always have in the back of our minds what political, economic, social, and environmental issues might be disrupting the demand that we would normally be able to predict. Next slide, Joel. So in regular supply planning, we would kind of be focused on supplier relationships. And, before the pandemic, we wanted reliability and we wanted good prices and we wanted it to be available when we wanted it. We needed to trust the quality and we needed it to be convenient for us. And we were hoping this relationship was going to go to some favorable payment or credit terms, right? So on top of good relationships with vendors, we wanted cost-effective supply options. So we would outsource, we would offshore, we would try to keep labor cheap and goods cheap as much as we could. We would probably use lean manufacturing, which has been the principal method of inventory management for decades. And this is where you produce only what you need. And just-in-time inventory goes right along with that method. And that's really when you order just what you need. And that takes a lot of data analysis to get those numbers right. So also in supply planning, important to us was logistics. We just really wanted, reliable shipping that was fast and low cost, and we needed an easy return policy. We wanted predictable lead times. So that's kind of like how we did supply and demand planning in the past. And it wasn't a huge function of what a company did. Now it's starting to get there. Can we move to the next slide, Joel? And also, I'm just wondering, I didn't see the chat box. Oh, where did my chat box go? I didn't see a chat come up there. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I love it. Okay. I see a small bakery. Okay. Yes, I can probably imagine a couple of things changing in that. Painting contractor, extension in Hill County. And, oh, jewelry designer and producer. Okay, we've got some manufacturers here. And then commercial lender. Okay, I love hearing this. Thank you, everybody, so much. And I'm kind of curious just at where we've been seeing some supply and demand changes. If you wouldn't mind just keeping the chat going and just if there's specific supply chain stuff, if you wouldn't mind sharing a challenge and demand as well. I'm going to touch on those a little bit later based on kind of what your comments are in there. So how do we do this now? What's different about how we do supply and demand planning? Could you move to the next slide, Joel? Okay, so a lot of you are probably seeing changes in consumer preferences and priorities. Um, their pricing, what they want to pay is a little different. Essentially, their disposable income is all different. They probably don't even have their budgets figured out. The frequencies in the trends of when they have money and when they don't have money is kind of erratic. And so that's going to affect what products they want. Are they looking for essential versus non-essential? And we've all seen how this is changing how where people go to purchase. A lot of people are shifting to online buying, and brick and mortar shops are kind of just trying to figure out what schedule people leave the house. So the values are all different, and this is causing a lot of demand dips and spikes, and a lot of things that we just can't quite predict anymore. Um, could you just move to the next slide, Joel? And then as far as the supply side, why it's upside down and backwards is because there's productivity around the world has changed. And this is coming from lots of places. Costs of materials and really everything is going up. And we've had scarcities and shortages that have caused supply chain pinches and further scarcities and shortages. And one of the big ones is just the labor gap that we are dealing with right now. That's causing a lot of gaps in logistical services. We've got shipping delays that are a lot of it's being resulting from the labor gap of truck drivers, apparently one of the harder positions to fill right now. So that's not helping with lead times. And what's happened over this past year at the end of 2021, I heard from a lot of retailers that didn't get their holiday inventory. The lead times were too far out. They didn't receive them till the beginning of 2022. So they started this past year out with way more inventory on hand, and they missed their holiday season. So I heard that from a couple of different clients, and I actually read it in an article. And kind of just to give you a little perspective about how common that is, Joel, would you switch to the next slide? I did a little research just to get a little perspective because I heard so many people saying the same things. I just need help with my inventory because I have so much now. And really, every big retailer had the exact same thing happen in 2022. If you look, Target was holding 43% more than their average inventory last year. So this is just kind of across the board. Everybody kind of fell into this phenomenon that happened. So I just want to talk just a little bit about the solutions, how we have been solving this. Can we move to the next slide, Joel? Okay, so solutions on a basic level, and let me just kind of reword this slide. Really, the things that we need to secure a supply network is going to come down to transparency, close relationships, and longer term commitments with those relationships. The obvious one that I'm not saying is data. I'm a data dork. I think you can't do anything without verifiable good data. And so really I'm focusing on that as being what I help my clients with. And next slide, I can just show you what I mean by a digital supply chain. When bigger companies are investing in all these technologies and trying to tie this network together, what they're trying to do is just open the transparency, the information between vendors and suppliers. The Internet of Things, that's just data collection and analysis and communication between devices. And machine learning is artificial intelligence designed to learn information and predict an outcome. So things like this are being employed to be able to build your own digital supply chain solution. A lot of really big tech and maybe a little overwhelming. And I'm just at this point wondering if a show of hands, you wouldn't mind, is anybody in the place and in the scale right now where they would like to upgrade their technology to employ some digital solutions? I'm just wondering if anybody has that desire.
And you should have a little hand option, or you can use the chat window, or if you want to just turn your camera on and wave, that'll work as well.
If you do have a desire to learn more about that, I have a lot of resources. I don't want to go down any digital supply rabbit holes, but I advise maybe looking at the Digital Supply Chain podcast. It's got a lot of good information in it. But otherwise, feel free to get a hold of me. We'll have a conversation. But essentially, what I'm finding is that my clients are a little overwhelmed by these solutions. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Joel. So what most of the entrepreneurs I talk to are looking for is they're looking for a practical solution, like how do I do that, and something that fits their talents and their technologies. So see, these are the steps that I'm taking people through. I'm not helping people wire their digital supply chains. I'm taking more of a manual approach. So in the next slide, I'll talk you through the advice that I've been sharing with my clients. First thing we always go to is getting that data in order. Again, I'm the biggest data dork, and I don't go forward with a plan until I know what the information is. So I'm just wanting to recommend first off that if I was in a consultation with you, that's the first thing we would do. I would want to make sure that you can capture all the details that you need to see and that you're storing it in an information system that you can actually access. You should probably be creating item codes that categorize and subcategorize for you. Let that item code do the work for you. And then you just need to know how to access, filter, and sort the data for analysis. And wherever it's living, you know, it's in your POS system, your bookkeeping system, your e-commerce website, make sure it's consistently organized in a way that you can access and see what you need to see. And if your softwares don't allow you to see this data and access it, maybe think about looking for one that does. Data analysis is going to become more and more important in your world right now. Next slide, Joel. The next little piece of advice that I've been giving is essentially that we're looking at the data a lot more often and in a little more detail. So rather than kind of looking at a metric from the past year and looking at averages of all of my inventory and all of my cost, I'm starting to peel these things apart a little, break inventory into common categories so that I can peel apart and maybe analyze them separately. And so I'm advising that clients kind of just like keep track of things that are quick and easy metrics that they can nail down in shorter periods. So setting a goal for like next month based on what you know about certain metrics. So maybe I'm tracking my sales target for the month along with my purchasing budget, along with my labor budget. And if I keep within certain parameters, I know I'm going to be profitable that month. You know, keep it simple for yourself. Find those metrics and find what's normal and what's successful and keep up on it. The other piece of advice, if I could move to the next one, Joel. Again, reiterating that keeping products in common together, and maybe this means that they have the same vendor, and maybe it means they have the same seasonal trends. And I can explain a little bit later about how I do a quick analysis so that I can see these trends together. But again, just think of what shorter time periods, what does your season look like as opposed to average inventory for a year? You know, let's just try to imagine what details we need to see. Next slide, Joel, if you don't mind. I'm going to actually check my little chat box here and see if I can look at some demand problems, demand challenges. So customer demand has outstripped my system for getting my materials in on time. In the craft business, the shipping of materials to me is tripled in time needed over the last year. Okay, yes. So I'm kind of curious about when you're in this position where you've got the materials and they're no longer there on time and they no longer works with your plan. Is it time to look at new materials? Or is it such an essential component that we have to really gear our spending plan to make sure that gets here when it needs to? And if this is such an essential component, I might recommend reaching out to the vendor and letting them know that. Okay, and then I have another chat about getting ingredients. Let me cover that in just a minute about supply. Okay, yeah, and it seems like mostly supplier challenges right now, but I'm sure as we're kind of talking about these customers, you're realizing there's some demand challenges too. But when we're looking at demand challenges, and a lot of my clients have been dealing with this type of thing, I mean, really what it's coming down to is that there's all new trends happening and we need to figure them out. And it's going to be individual to your business and your customer segment. There's shifts in all the spending behavior and changes in all the values. So we need to figure out trends, shifts, and changes. So this is going to come down to real data as well. I'm not going to just go forth assumptions about this. We need to find ways that we can get real data from our customers. And people are doing it all kinds of different ways these days, but ultimately it's going to come down to a closer relationship with customers, some engagement, maybe a little social media stuff. Maybe you have a little more personal relationship with them through shipping and receiving, and maybe you send a survey out every now and then. But in any case, test those assumptions, because we thought we knew our customers before, and now they're different. They're just different. We're different, and we need to figure out exactly how to serve them the best. The next slide, another key point that I've been mentioning to clients is that in order to understand what your customers are demanding right now, you need to keep some close eyes on your competitors, because also the world is changing. Don't assume anybody's doing business as usual. You're going to probably want to peek in on price increases and maybe see if they even offer the products and services they have. They may be on a different strategic direction right now. So there's opportunities that have come up if you're paying attention, that there's new market share where a company may have phased out, and possibly your competitors are using innovative technologies that are brand new and maybe you can jump on board with. So pay attention to what they're doing. Test your assumptions about both customers and competitors, because everything's kind of on the move right now. Okay, I just want to read these supplier comments, because I'm going to move into suppliers now. Joel, if you wouldn't mind switching my slide. Okay, I'm checking on this bakery that couldn't get butter, sugar, and flour, and the coffee cups. Okay, yes, I've actually been hearing from clients of mine, really essential ingredients not being available, and I'm wondering, was there supply constraints on that, where you could only get a little bit but couldn't get the quantities that you needed? I'm just kind of curious if that was what that was about. But there's been a lot of challenges with just dairy, tracking down whipping cream and butter and eggs. And I just was noticing with a few different clients who've relied on Costco as their supplier, they can no longer keep Costco as their supplier, because there's now constraints on how many eggs Costco will let you take at a time. And so, I've also been noticing that Costco's prices keep going up, that now my clients can no longer rely on those costs of goods. So everybody's looking for new basic ingredients at stores. So I've been hearing this a lot. Okay, couldn't find butter for 2 weeks. Okay, that's kind of fits what I was hearing before. Let me just check to see if I've got another one here. I saw another one. Yes. And then the cups and
I think
okay. Yeah. Okay, well, so let me just go with some of the solutions around supply chains that I've been helping clients with. And really, first of all, you already have made it this far, so you already know where all the holes and the broken links are in the chain, right? You've already kind of figured out what the most vulnerable supplies are and why, and there was crazy ideas probably. But ultimately, we're kind of getting a map of where our supplies come from, and we need to know where they're coming from and about whatever's happening there. If they're coming from a risky area of the world where there's social and environmental issues, let's think of new solutions, Also, if there's someone else competing against you and you've got a really scarce supply, you need to know who those people are that are after that same supply as you. And then when supplies are scarce, what's the backup plan? How do we replace this? How do we veer production so that it still works with something else? So next slide, please, Joel. Yes. And so the other really key points about building the supply chain is diversification. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we may like this vendor and they're getting us what we need and it's coming in 3 months. But in the meantime, we're forming friends with another vendor that guy's going to give us what we need in a 2-week turnaround, although it's not going to be exactly the way I want it. So we're thinking outside of the box. We're being a little more flexible and we're finding multiple solutions for the supplies that we really need to get our hands on. Next slide, Joel, would you mind? And then rebuilding the trust in the vendor network. This has taken a little bit of partnership and collaboration. I mentioned transparency, and really what we're saying is that your supplier understands your needs and your customers' needs and the time and how essential and what priorities, and you understand what it takes for them to get their supplies. So it's not just about transparency and kind of collaboration. You're kind of making a commitment and being loyal to them and saying, let's make this work together. Yes, I will purchase next year's production run as well. I promise that I will have that ready when the order comes in. So that's what we mean by loyalty and transparency. And these are how supply chains are being rebuilt. Just as a quick comment, this is what went wrong in the semiconductor crisis. Semiconductor companies were very closely tied to phone companies and computer companies because that supply was so essential. But cars didn't have that close of a relationship with semiconductor companies. So who do you think got chopped off of the demand list first? So now car companies are having to redesign cars so that they don't need the semiconductors because it's not going to happen. They're not available. So that's just kind of, it was the relationship that made that supply chain sort of work for some and not others. Okay. I know I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Joel. Okay, I'm just going to go over, and this is my forte. I'm a ratio person. I'm a math person. I'm an analyst. This is my normal world, and I'm sure that a lot of business owners, you know your gross margin. That's probably the most basic ratio you can get your hands on. All it is the sale minus the cost. Tells you the profit on a sale, right? In dollars. So if I had $500 in sales, 300 in cost, I have a $200 gross margin. But then we take that gross margin percent and we, I actually flipped this. Well, I'll have to work on that later. This ratio is upside down. I'm finding my own mistake. But we would take that sales number and divide it by the gross margin. Or no, I'm sorry. We would take the gross margin and divide it by the sales to get the percentage of profit on that sale. I did have another part of this slide, but it isn't on this version, but I just wanted to also mention that you use gross margin percent to figure out like target profit or break even. I don't talk about break even because I don't like breaking even, but target profit, the amount of money you want to make in a month, add that to your operating expenses for a month, and then divide that number by the gross margin percent, and you'll get a sales target in order to cover all of that. So that's kind of like where we use this number a good bit in ratios. And then if we could move to the next slide, I want to show you just a couple other really important ratios for inventory people, and maybe you use these regularly. Just simple inventory turnover is the where we take the cost of goods sold for like maybe the year 2022, how much we put in cost of goods sold, and then we average the inventory at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, so we get an average. And the relationship between those, cost of goods sold divided by inventory, is going to give us how many times that turned over, how many times we sold that inventory in a year. So $300,000 in cost and 100,000 in inventory would say we've turned that over 3 times a year. A lot of you probably use this ratio if you're inventory people. You can also you can figure out how many days something was in inventory, dividing 365 by that turnover. If we could go to the next slide then, Joel, thank you. Okay, just a little hand raise, if anybody, or a chat box, if you don't mind. Does anybody use ratios that they that are helping them right now? Any other kind of recommended ratios that anybody's seen or used? Inventory turnover is going to be the best one, but I just want to recommend when we look at what's good in an inventory turnover, we used to be able to look up industry reports, and we can't really do that anymore. It's not super relevant to what's happening in the world. So we're going to think to ourselves, okay, is it perishable? Is it obsolete, or is it going to go out of style? So when we're looking at goods, we're thinking, okay, let's get a quicker turnover. Where non-perishable goods, we could keep it longer, but if it's something like apparel and electronics, we might want to turn it over quick. It'll go out of style. For manufacturers, there's probably lots of different inventory categories, and some of them are at risk, and some of them are you have to hold a lot of, and others you'll turn over quickly. This is where I really recommend peeling apart categories and analyzing your turnovers separately, and just knowing which ones have high and which ones have low, and figuring out what's normal for you and monitoring your own success. Okay, next slide, Joel, if you don't mind. I just wanted to quickly just not scare anybody too much, but just show of hands. Does anyone maintain a budget, a cash budget, operating budget, a labor budget? Just kind of curious if anybody is using those. Also, if nobody's using those, my next question, oh yes, cash budget, yay, love it. Okay, anybody that's not using budgets, could you let me know if you're sleeping well? Do you get kept up at night wondering if you have enough money to cover your needs? Is there sleeping problems? Typically, that's what I see in entrepreneurs, sleeping problems, because they don't budget and get all that stuff out of their head and find a system that works for them to track their information. Next slide, Joel, if you don't mind. Just really quickly want to explain what I do to create an inventory purchasing budget. Really quick, I'll just go into a client's system, grab a sales report out of their POS and get it as detailed as possible. I pull it out as a CSV and then I open it in Excel, and I turn all of that data into a pivot table, which I'd be happy to explain if you like more information. Then I can easily make a graph or a chart. I can see data. I can break up inventory categories. I can see the trends throughout the year. And then from there, I'm going to set an expected level and an expected sales activity based on my information. And then I'm going to tie the costs associated with it and consider that a purchase budget from month to month. And that's just a rough, and we can get more detailed on that if you'd like. Next slide, if you don't mind, Joel. This slide, I just really wanted to, I kind of changed it, but that's okay. I can talk through what my changes were. Essentially, what I wanted to say is that if you're a manufacturing company, I want to encourage you to look into an ERP, an enterprise resource planning module. It's the type of software that will assess the demand for your orders. It produces a production plan with labor and materials. It'll convert raw materials into labor and labor into finished goods. And that it will give you an accurate recognition of like cost and gross margin for every product or batch you make. So if you're using QuickBooks or another type of accounting software and you are a manufacturing company and having a hard time tracking inventory, I'd be happy to talk to you about just entertaining the idea of an ERP. Okay, so next slide, Joel. I actually did insert one in here, but I just want to make sure that I'm pointing out that really just asking for help is probably my next piece of advice. I don't have to give that advice to my clients because they're already in a room with me, but I just want to really encourage you to find the professionals and experts that you need. Ask them for help. There's free advisors all over the state, and everybody is eager to help you. So feel free to reach out if you need any help. But key takeaways I'd like you to really have gotten out of this, and I'm really sorry that this is all I could fit into this time slot of this webinar that I've gone completely over time on, but I would be happy to chat more in depth, so please reach out. But I just want to remind you of the key points, which are not what this slide says, and essentially test your assumptions about demand, get closer to your suppliers, keep your data in order, and then analyze that data and develop metrics that measure success for you. And then once you set this plan, actually monitor it, use this plan to measure your performance. So hopefully you've gotten some sort of tidbits in this, and I would love to hear more about, I was going to read through the chat again and see if there's comments, but if you guys want to just pipe up and if there's situations you want to share that you think would be helpful for others, or if there's questions, I would love to hear them.
Well, thank you for that. Let me start you off. I got a couple questions, but I will encourage people to keep sending questions in the chat window, or if you want to unmute and ask a question, we'll do that in just a second as well. And I think you touched on this, and there were a couple questions a little bit around this as well. How do you advise clients when they're thinking about a supplier that's had difficulty supplying what they need, either in general or in a timely fashion? Is it better to have two suppliers, or is it better to have a tight relationship with one supplier for whatever product you're working on?
I'd say the most diverse thing would be both. Have a super tight relationship with one supplier and find another supplier for backup. That would be, and essentially when we diversify supply chains, the things I'm reading, like companies are really, really diversifying. They're like, yeah, we're actually making that component in-house and we're outsourcing it just to keep it diverse and secure and ready for disasters. So, whatever makes you feel the most secure in that relationship, I definitely have some. I have a client who has nailed down the supply. She makes baked goods, and she nailed down the supply of a certain grain until next year's harvest. She knows exactly when it's coming in, and she's really hoping that the harvest is good, because if it's not, she will have to change her product offerings. At this point, she's already exhausted all the other suppliers, and now she's down to tight relationship, long-term commitment. If this doesn't work, I'm going to have to change all my product offerings. So, yeah, every solution possible all at once is my advice, I guess.
All right. So the second one, and this expands on some things you said and some comments we had. Obviously, holding more inventory on hand might help buffer a little bit if you have supply chain issues, but it costs money to hold extra inventory. And you do have, some products are more perishable, and your space may allow you to only hold so much depending on the situation. Is there a formula or a process you go through on kind of figuring out what that additional cost is and maybe what the optimal amount of inventory to carry is?
Yeah, well, I do all kinds of math in different directions and kind of find a feasible, comfortable solution within. So, I mean, I have been calculating capacity of people's retail space lately to figure out what inventory is taking up as much space. So if you've got inventory that takes up a lot of space, I encourage you to know the capacities of that, because that ends up being a factor, like a furniture store. But what was the other part of your question there, Joel? I'm like,
Well, part of it was just, there's a cost to holding this. That money could be doing other things. Is there
oh,
a,
yeah.
a goalpost, or how do you sort of incorporate that back into pricing or your optimal level of inventory?
Well, yes, there's a cost to holding all this, and that's essentially kind of the across the board what everybody's been dealing with. Not only, I mean, it costs a lot of money to hold all your cash and inventory. That's the first part of that hurts. And now you're renting a warehouse to store it in. I mean, it all kind of hurts. And so that's why we're trying to find the most cost-effective way. But in some people's situations, I've got a client who's got like a year and a half's worth of one component because she really, really needed to nail down that supply. And so she's got it hidden all over her house. It's just in boxes stacked up everywhere. She's just like, okay, that's just what we have to do right now. So yeah, there's lots of hidden costs to this, which is why it hurts. And we're doing our best to keep those low. But yeah, good point.
Well, let's pause here. Does anyone want to unmute and ask a question?
Just reading through some of these comments to cost of labor. I was gonna go into that, but that's a whole other webinar. I basically have worked on two main things for this past year with clients, and it has been inventory stuff, budgeting, and like this, what I've told you, and then a lot of human resource management stuff. making sure that agreements between subcontractors and contractors are good, making sure we take employees through the processes of reviews and write-ups and employee manuals, a lot of that stuff, because employer-employee relationships have been suffering immensely over these past few years, and it's taking a lot of hand-holding and back rubbing. So yes, I'm just reading Janet's comment about labor last season. And feel free to reach out to me if there's some of these things you think that I could help you crush numbers on.
So maybe on a bit of a positive note, a comment I might add, just me as a personal consumer, I had a sprinkler blowout company I've been with for many years, and they informed me they didn't have enough people to come to my area anymore. So I went shopping for a new company. Similar story with a tire shop I've used for a long time that has usually had a same day service, told me I could get an appointment in 3 weeks. And so I went shopping for new supplier there, sort of. Are we seeing small businesses gain customers because other long-term relationships that customer had are falling apart?
Oh, I just wanted to make sure, I'm going to put my information.
I think you're freezing up a little bit on us, but luckily we're at the end. If you'd like to put your email address in the chat window, that would be great. Otherwise, anyone is certainly welcome to reach out to me and I can get Marguerite's contact information to them. And my information is on the website that you logged in from today. So first of all, thank you all for joining us. We went a little longer, but we had some great comments and some great presentations. So thank you, Marguerite, for joining us. It looks like we may have lost her on sort of the internet connection side of things. Please do join us a month from today, February 2nd, and we will have Allie Townsend from the Montana Department of Agriculture talking about the various business support systems that they have available producers there. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you 1 month from today.